We'll call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman.
Here.
Here. Jermaine.
Here. Lamore. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Present. So we have our work session this evening, but we start, first item there, clerk is?
The presentation of the downtown camera project installation update.
We'll take public comment first.
Oh, sorry.
I know, so I almost went past it myself.
Sorry. Still getting used to that.
Me too. So we do have public comment at our work sessions, as we explained last meeting as well, and we put those at the front of the meeting, see if there's any public comments relating to the work session items. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding public comments? See, we have one young lad here, but I don't think he's going to make comments tonight, maybe at the meeting, though. Okay, seeing none, now clerk.
Right, so then the next item is 4159, presentation, downtown camera project installation update.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, I guess we have three items here on the work session agenda, and the first one was stated. If you would, please, any comments or openings?
I know that this has been a project in the works, and I think Olmsted for taking this project on, I think it's something that could really be advantageous to us as we go forward. And we've done a lot of work on it, and I think it's important that we update you where we're at in the process.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Tolstead.
Honorable Mayor, City Council Member, Clerk Lavoie, Chad Tolstead, Director of Public Safety. So it's been some months since we first came and talked to you, presented to you on the camera project here, and as Mr. Robinson stated, just want to give you an update of where we're at with this project. But start back with where we started. Again, I know sometimes projects are brought to me, months go by, I don't remember what they told me, so I'm going to give you a quick review of what we discussed previously. So how we arrived here is through collaboration, cooperation, a consultation, and a review. The collaboration came from the many different departments within the city of Monroe, where we were brought a map of the city. Everybody kind of drew on the map where they thought they might like a camera at. And then what we found was many different departments within the city wanted cameras in the same areas for various different reasons concerning their departments. And through the cooperations of the different departments in consultation with our IT, we came up with recommendations to council for your review, which was ultimately authorized, I think going back some months now, I dare say September of last year. So some of the pros and cons of the cameras, again, this is a review for you. Support citywide security plans, aka our critical infrastructure, to help deter crime. Monitor scenarios, activities, social events, demonstrations. Social events would be like we just started the social district. Some of those things and how we're doing with those events to gather data to improve city functions. We can do a review of things that go on within the city and say, could we have done this better? Let's review what we did on video. Coming to right decisions and a cost savings for less personnel. I mean, we have cameras we can use to monitor situations instead of actual personnel. Disadvantages are the privacy issues that come up. We will not include facial recognition in any of these cameras or license plate readers with these. And we're very cognizant of people's privacies. And where they would normally expect to have privacy, they will still be ensured that they would have privacy there. And to be clear, it doesn't prevent theft or crime, it just helps to deter it. The camera information, I'll kind of spare you all the details of this. Basically, we can turn these cameras on and they can run for 20 days and record continuously, and then they'll start recording over themselves. They do have analytics within it for the video, some sound things. They can pick up motion as some of how these cameras operate, but we're still working with our IT department as to how we want to run these cameras. Do we want to just turn them on and let them go, or do we want to have them respond to movements or noises or the like? Cost. The costs were higher than what we thought initially, so when we first presented to you, and then rubber meets the road and we actually placed the order. So you see the bottom line there is about $8,000 higher than what we initially anticipated for the cameras. $2,000 of that was for incidentals, from ordering wiring, power devices of those such. So about 25% of that overage from there, but the bulk of the cameras in which we ordered, all the big heavy lift of the finances has been paid out. We still anticipate the monthly hotspot cost about $3,500 a year for the 8 cameras. So you see here on the map here, there's the first initial rollout of the camera project, which has, I think, 9 cameras in there. The ones circled in the reds are the ones we've actually have deployed. But you can see the cameras that we came and picked these camera positions, suggested it to council, and then Mr. Cochran had presented the social district. All these cameras were already within that social district already. So you can see how the departments are working together and collaborating with these things, but they come together because we're all working for the same common good. So here's a picture from the Harrison and First Street camera, what you can kind of get a look at. Here is the riverfront parking lot, front in Washington. So the pictures themselves are a little blurry. And so when I asked IT about it, why is this blurry? Why aren't we seeing this, a picture of it? I took these in real time. I mean, there's like a live feed that comes. I paused it, took a snapshot off on my computer. The downloaded version is clearer. And in working with IT, I found out there's a whole bunch of other things we can make adjustments on. The next camera placement at my request would be at Labor Park. We've had some issues that have come up here. Nothing terrible, but the city has made an investment within that area. And we want to just monitor and make sure that area is being used for what it's intended to be used for. And we did have some amount of issues that came up, nothing major with the implementation. So this was phase 1. And always with first phases, as we roll things out and we take a look at how things are going, there are some challenges that come up. And one of the challenges we came up, we put cameras in certain places, like on our map says, electrician, go put this camera here. Electrician goes over there and says, I cannot put it here. I don't have electricity here. So the cameras would have to be moved in the same general area, but not exactly what we thought we might capture. So these are some of the challenges, but we're finding solutions to those challenges. And as far as like the cameras not all being set up, it's just a personnel availability. There's other projects that come up in the city that take precedent over some of these camera projects as they are, but I know our electrician is getting to them as fast as he's able to. So what's our next steps? We continue to establish a baseline for recording. We figure out what we want to record, when we want to record, what we want to monitor. We're changing the camera settings to capture different areas within the city. And what those cameras, we actually can focus in on one area where we capture the whole picture, but we can make one area more clear than other areas in how we're going to record that out. And that comes through some trial and error of doing different things. I've already been in contact with IT, say, hey, can we move this camera a little bit this way or that way? Electrician goes out and makes those changes. So after that, would be a review of the phase 2 cameras, which we showed you some of those previously, some months ago, and where those would roll out to be. My intention would be after these all get set and we figure out what we like and what we don't like here, we come back and discuss it with you to see if we want to continue with this project or if we say that's enough for now. With that, answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for the director? Brian?
Thank you, Your Honor. Director, you said something about storing up to 20 days.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible we can save that storage or store that somewhere else, that whatever the 20-day storage is, whatever the 20-day tape is, or is it possible to keep that, or?
We can, though some of that storage areas, like you start talking about putting it into the cloud,
Yeah.
There is an increased cost, if I remember correctly, fairly significant. But if we have events or something like that we want to capture, we can download those certain areas and certain events. Let's say we want to capture the tree lighting ceremony downtown because staff did just a great job. We want to repeat that process next year. We can download that video and keep it with no extra charge.
But it's basically picking and choosing which ones you want to keep versus.
Yep.
And you have X amount that you can keep.
No, I think we can download as much as we want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we have to store those someplace else. There's no limit as to how much we download, but we to store everything. And I don't believe that was your question. Just can we just store everything all the time? Was
Right.
Just we can just grab certain instances, download what we want to download, and store those where we want to store those.
Perfect. And as far as the move, is it movable? The view is movable, or are they stagnant where they're at?
Once we set them, they're stagnant.
Okay. And can you live stream them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the only question I had.
Other
Thank you.
questions from council for director? So that, if I understood correctly, phase 1 is kind of where we are. You're doing the next proposed location. What do you anticipate to be as you move forward on phase two? Is there other analysis you need to do? I know you have some of the criteria here, baseline recording and stuff, but the other locations and where would you think you might be starting, or is that yet to be determined?
We did look into it, and so I have some of the phase two cameras here now. And if you look at, like, we put M50 South Telegraph, which would be much more traffic related. Pardon me while I scroll down here just a little bit and I can give you some. And then we have Elm in North Macomb, in Third, in South Monroe, some, more heavily traffic related areas there. These were already kind of predetermined as well. These are things that we took as part of as a whole picture. When we first had all the people give their input on this was part of that as well. So we don't need to go back and say, hey, what does everybody want to see for this next phase? We do have selections for the next phase. I guess my more concern would be if we want to continue on with the project, if we're happy with where we're at after all this is done, or do we want to, call it halt here? And again, and then more cameras in phase two, which would be Elm and Winchester, and then Winchester East 3rd Street, and then there's one more at Munson Park, Munson Park as well.
Yes, Kelly?
You talked about privacy. Can you explain the purpose of the audio and how you plan to use it? And also, as far as crime investigation, how will you use the cameras? Like if it's past 20 days, you're still in the middle gathering information or whatever, how would you be able to use that, use the camera after 20 days? If you hadn't captured, the incident, downloaded it, then it would just be gone, or would you be able to go back beyond that and look for the particular incidents?
So I'll start with the last first, if I may. So yes, and once the 20 days goes past and we haven't downloaded that, captured that, we would lose that video. It'd be similar to like if we go to a gas station, we had something bad happen at a gas station. Their cycles are sometimes very short. It depends on how they set their settings, but once that's gone, it's gone. So if we don't capture it within that 20 days, it would be gone. The audio recording, which was your first part of your question, is I haven't listened into the cameras. I haven't went in there and listened to them, but that would be of a similar nature of the privacy issues with the video. So it would be capture things close by, but I haven't got in there to take a look to really to know what distance this is tracking this at. It's kind of my more understanding with these things. It would be difficult to just zero in on passive conversations in the area, just passing by the camera. But I don't know that for sure, but that's something I can find out.
So what do you think the purpose of the audio is? And
It would be the same. I mean, speaking strictly kind of from a criminal aspect, if something bad happened, we would want to hear what people might be saying on that. We also, sometimes it's fun, like about the first thing that pops in my mind, like a Tigers game, when everybody cheers, you could have some very good audio, some encouraging audio on there as well. Mm-hmm. So it could be used for different purposes. I don't think that's going to be not as important, but as prominently, that's something we use as the video.
Other questions? I'm thinking. Michelle?
Do we own these cameras or are we leasing them from a company?
We own them, and each one has its own hotspot.
All right, good.
Yep.
Okay, so you're aware of the cameras I have in my building. So if there
Yes.
is an accident, criminal activity or whatever, you're immediately gonna go to that and you're gonna scroll it in and you're gonna download it and the whole kit and caboodle, correct?
Correct.
So basically you're gonna have it, so 20 days isn't really gonna matter.
20 days in criminal investigation is a long time to have video. Like if we would go to a normal business and they say we store our videos for 20 days, we would be like, holy cow, that's a long time. So that's not the norm. So 20 days does provide us a lot of time.
So it would be done immediately for whatever happens in that particular area.
Yeah, in any normal investigation, if we're aware there's a camera and there's video on the camera, you wouldn't wait to download it. You'd want to capture that right away.
All right. I don't think there's any other questions. I guess we'll look forward to, as you collect some of the, as you said, the baseline for recording and maybe a report back what that might be of value and what benefits, and I think can help drive as we move forward through, as you go through phase 2 and then others that were in the some of the areas around the downtown area, that some of the activities I'd be interested in as well. Okay, there's no other questions. Mr. Robinson?
Excellent idea, and I think it's something that we remember. And being in communities that have had cameras, I think you have to look at our investment in our community cameras here. I think it is a supplement, because pretty much the way it's beginning is all businesses are starting to have their own camera systems. And I think even private residences with the Ring doorbells and all those things. And I know from a criminal background, the investigative tool that those videos have become to be able to solve crimes have been amazing. And I think that any effort that we make as a city to enhance that, along with our partners, with the public, I think is a great plan.
I think a last comment, because I'm glad you brought up again the fact that, you know, the cameras that we're putting up aren't there for enforcement action. They're not there to at intersections or stop signs or traffic lights or speeding. I know there's a lot of that within the country where that's being pursued and implemented. Even in the state of Michigan, I understand that's being discussed as far as in construction zones. I'm glad that we're not going that path. It's not something I support. I think that, you know, if you, cameras are good for a purpose and reason. I think it all was said, but I don't think it should be the enforcement. And then somebody, if it's there to deter the action that is going on, which is whether speeding or traffic lights, and they get the ticket 10 days later, I'm not sure how that changes anybody's behavior within the time frame. Traffic stops and contacts allows for the initial response to rectify somebody's driving behavior versus 10 days later, so, and getting the ticket. And so I'm glad we're not pursuing that process, and I think council has said that pretty clear, so I appreciate that for what your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. Next item, Mr. Robinson.
Honor and council, again, something that has been on the plate for a little bit, and I think that Mr. Cochran has put together the park rules and policy revision update, and I think that you've been provided some of the park rules and policies, and I think he'd just like to give an update of where we're at with that, and be ready to get to the point where we can implement.
Mayor, Council, good evening. This evening, as Mr. Robinson indicated, tonight I'm bringing forth some proposed rules and regulations updates in our city park system. The last time that the current rules were updated was in 2017, and if you'll recall, earlier this year, the City Council eliminated the Parks and Rec Commission. With a couple thoughts in mind. First, any park plans, revising park plans, improving the parks, site plans, things of that sort go before the Planning Commission anyway. And so those will go that route. Any regulations and rules updates like the ones we're discussing tonight would come before City Council. And so tonight, we've taken a look between my staff and I, as well as input from other directors in terms of some proposed updates based on some experiences that we've lived over the past couple years. And by all means, these are early in the process, so looking for your feedback and approval, as well as that of Attorney Buds as we look to finalize the last update. So I'll dive right in. The first couple sections that we updated and really left the same was the purpose, the applicability, and the enforcement. Purpose is to make sure that everybody can enjoy our parks. Applicability, these rules apply to anybody who wishes to enjoy our facilities. In enforcement, one thing that we did update is that our park staff is authorized to enforce these rules. Previously, we didn't have that language in there. and relied heavily on public safety. But we also added a section for definitions and then updated the administrative position. So with the restructuring in the department, as well as the elimination of the Parks and Rec Commission, we've updated the document to reflect that. So diving in, what you'll see in the highlighted areas on the screen are what we've updated. So right now, our parks are open every day from 6 o'clock a.m. till 10 o'clock p.m. What the language that we're adding is unless otherwise posted. And the reason for this is when we think about the Heritage Corridor, the Park Service and the state park, their rules are dusk to dawn. And so we've looked at consistent use, whether you're in the city park, people don't know whether they're on National Park Service property, state land, or city land. So we may look at specific city parks that are within the Heritage Corridor, making their hours consistent with the remainder of the recreational amenities in the area. Again, nothing's been changed and nothing posted, just leaving that flexibility in there. The facilities available on a first come, first served basis, that's as it is now. However, we would propose to update our park reservation policy, our facility reservation policy for folks who are wanting to rent our band shell and pavilions and things of that sort. So that would be another policy separate. Right now, no alcohol is allowed in any parks. We're updating that language to reflect the establishment of the special or the social district. Also allowing it by special event. And so if somebody applies for a special event license, we'd have the flexibility to approve that. But general policy across the board remains no alcohol in the parks. The other item that we added is improving the language related to disturbing natural life and native materials. Right now it says, shall not destroy plants, trees, and shrubs. We enhance that language to include rocks and other natural materials. When you think about Veterans Park and the fish passage and the kayak passage, we've had instances where folks have moved those rocks and it disturbs the flow of water. And so increasing the language to also include rocks and then on our trails. Garbage right now, it says that it must be placed in a container. A lot of times what people do is if the container is overflowing, they just leave it on the ground next to it. And so we're going to ask our park visitors if we don't have a container there, if it's overflowing, please let us know. There's a number posted in every city park, or take it with you when you leave so that it's not blowing all over the park. Particularly that's going to apply for like pavilion rentals and things like that when folks have parties. The use of grills, right now we only allow people to use the charcoal grills that are in the parks. We're proposing to update language to allow folks to use the personal portable gas stoves, the little propane stoves, along with instruction. So talking about not using it under the shelter, can't put it on the picnic table, it has to be in the grass, has to be supervised. Certainly we would work with Director Tolsted's department, the fire marshal, and Commander Smiley when we're developing that specific language to beef up that section. Any questions so far? Okay.
I'll wait. I have
Okay.
some.
The next section is one that we've been dealing with at Munson Park, particularly on the stone trail that goes around the park. The use of e-bikes, e-scooters, mini bikes, dirt bikes, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles on our trails. They've been doing a lot of damage, particularly early in the season when it's really wet and creating the ruts across the trails. But also in the northern part of Munson Park, we've had actual snowmobilers throughout the wintertime. They create the very big ruts on the trails. And so beefing up the language that all motorized vehicles must remain on designated paved roadways and parking areas at all times. Again, we're leaving some language in there unless otherwise posted, because we're cognizant some people have motor skills abilities that are different than others, so motorized scooters, things like that help people get around. Certainly we want to be cognizant and respectful for that and allowing them on the trails, and so having the markings, but particularly on the non-motorized trail, not allowing motorized vehicles. I'm sorry the bottom part is so small, but it basically says non-motorized trails may be used by walkers, joggers, non-motorized cyclists, snow skiers, skaters, snowmobilers, or snowboarders, skateboarders, unless the trail is otherwise posted. Be respectful when you're on there. So it's mixing pedestrian with wheeled vehicles, which is okay. But trying to make sure that all the motorized vehicles are staying on the paved trails, the paved bike lanes, other things that we've been installing on the city road network. Really the trails in North Munson Park are really for mountain bikers and walkers and those on non-motorized bikes, not necessarily motorized bikes. That's the small part just made large. Pets and animals, I think this is something we wanted to bring forth for discussion. Right now, in all of our city parks, all pets must be on a leash no longer than 6 feet. The owners must clean up their pet waste. They're not to be left unattended. We're also adding language in here that they can't be hitched. You can't tie your dog to a tree because we don't want to damage the tree. You need to remain in control of your dog and not leaving it tied up in a park. But one of the things that was brought up for discussion is the use of a dog exercise area. Having discussion with Director Tolstead as well as my staff, thinking about having the ability to allow folks to have their dog off a leash as long as they're within full control of the owner, close proximity to the owner, and the owner has to clean up their waste, and the dog has to be vaccinated with the current license during certain periods. So during the winter months when the park isn't so much used, and this is the area north of the Mesa soccer fields on the trails, the open prairie, and the grass trails, allowing folks to have their dog off a leash to exercise November 1st through March 31st between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. daily. And then in the warmer months from April 1st to October 31st, daily from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., so during the earlier hours, except for legal holidays and weekends when the parks are going to be more heavily used. So that's a new policy. We don't have a dog park right now. We don't allow any dogs to be off a leash, and so wanted to bring that forward for council's consideration and thought as well. Do you want me to keep going?
Brian has a question. I'll ask mine then. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I understand your reasoning for Saturday and Sunday. Is it really well used on a Saturday or Sunday and holidays?
During the summer months, people go out early and walk those trails and bike and things like that. So during the warmer months it is, but not really during the colder months. So during the colder months, it would be any day, including weekends and holidays.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kelly, go ahead.
Excuse me. With Michigan, having strict leash laws, what kind of liability may that present if we say we allow a dog off the leash and then a dog bite occurs? Because I know Michigan, to my understanding, has pretty strict leash laws.
That's a good point, and that's a good question. To that point, I haven't talked to the city attorney yet about this, but posting the rules about it has to be in your control, it has to remain close, it can't be running 300 yards ahead of you. Having those parameters, I don't know if that's enough for those safeguards and liabilities, but we can look at that as we formulate the final rule and be able to address that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, if my child got bit during these hours, and then I know I'm going to win in court if you didn't have your dog on a leash, but now I can add the city to the lawsuit as well because you made a rule that allowed these owners to have their dogs off of the leash. I was just thinking that. I don't know if that would actually happen, but
Yep, that's the stuff we have to consider when we're thinking about policies and rules like this.
Brian?
Yeah, just another question regarding basically the enforcement. I know that it's I would assume it's going to be public safety's job to enforce the law, but obviously you're probably going to need some signage as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that no teeth without the enforcement. But if you have the signage, people can make a decision on their own as to whether or not they want to break the law.
Yeah.
And I think that could bear well with the legal aspect of having owners without the leash, the dogs without the leash, I should say.
Yeah, and with that, we are in the process of updating the park signage right now, and we're paying for that area of the park. You had approved recently a license agreement for Mr. Satilli to do access, so we're posting signs about farm equipment, remarking all the trails, putting new trail signage up, and so we can certainly incorporate some language if this rule is adopted to such.
Thank you.
So I'll go back because otherwise I may not get back there and I may forget about this. But so back in the first year, you don't have to go back in slides. Basically on facilities and use of facilities and the parks and stuff, you'd first come, first serve with a separate reservation policy. What's the time frame on that? Have you thought about, I mean, I'm going to do it not this September, but next September, and I send it in. Is that permissible? Is there a time frame that you would have to say by the start of the year?
Yep.
And I'm just trying to figure that out.
I forget the date it is every year, but we have a certain date the reservations open for the remainder of the season. So I think it's February they open, all the shelter rentals open, and park facility reservations open for that year.
And then just because it has to be through the application process, they just can't call and say or
Correct.
have a hold.
Correct, and there's a
with
fee
the
associated.
Fee associated to the reservation or
Yep.
the application. Okay. Next is on the area, the discussion on the grills and an update there about permitting expansion in the parks. Will there be, have you thought about having a designated or directed area where they're permitted? I think about when we have some of the heavier activities and think that somebody's in the middle, having their little hibachi or whatever, the little grill they're cooking on coals, and the problem I can say.
Yeah. Yes, we've thought of that because obviously we don't want them under the shelter and we don't want them under the picnic table and we want them on the ground. So we don't want you to burn the grass either. So we have to look at those designated areas, and chances are, I looked at the city of St. Louis and they have a really good park rules and regulations section, and they have policies that get more into the language on each of these items. So like they've got a metal detecting policy, they've got a park reservation, a grill policy, things like that. That puts more of the restrictions and guidelines in place rather than just in the general rules document. But we have looked at that, and that would be part of the discussion also that we have with Fire Marshal Hudson and Commander Smiley.
I mean, I could see a lot of space that could be open for this
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily have a congregation of people or an activity. You wouldn't want next to the sand volleyball course, of course.
Right.
But, but if it's not designated, say, well, it's permissible. So I'm thinking about, not that we need more signs, but just understanding of where the designations are.
Yeah, we certainly don't want them around playgrounds either where kids are running around and,
Correct.
So,
Okay. That
yep,
was my
good question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the next item that we have is a solicitation and donations of goods, services, business, or distribution of literature or information is prohibited. Right now, it's strictly prohibited in the parks. Nobody is allowed to do any of these activities. We do get requests from time to time, especially during our concerts and things like that, for companies or organizations to set up a table to promote their program or service. We'd like to put in some parameters about what we allow for that. So, for instance, this year we had the Monroe High Jazz Band play during one of our concerts, and their boosters wanted to sell their raffle tickets that evening as part of their concert performance. Under our current rules, we wouldn't allow that. However, we did allow them to set up a table and allow people to approach them in the corner of the park, so it wasn't distracting. They weren't allowed to walk through the audience and solicit and ask people to buy or anything like that. But we did allow them in that circumstance, in that instance. This year, with the increase in park sponsorships that we had, the Monroe Community Credit Union is the presenting sponsor, and part of the package, we allow them to set up a table at every concert as part of their significant donation to the parks. And so we're looking at how do we allow this under our, change the current rule to allow something like this. And so what we're doing is you have to have written permission. The director or their designee shall designate the area where they're allowed to set up and stand within to distribute materials and solicit donations or sales. Once it's designated, it will be available for anybody who is approved to operate within those parameters to occupy the space. This also applies, we do get questions, and obviously this will be a discussion that we have with Attorney Buds. Every year we do get requests from people who wish to exercise their First Amendment right and distribute literature or talk to folks about social issues, political issues, things of that sort. And so this would also be something we have allowed it every year for one particular group. They ask, they get permission, they're very respectful, they set up their table. They don't approach people, they wait for people to approach them. And so it's a designated area where it's not obstructive. We're also not shoving them in the corner of the park where people can't see them. So the designated area would be determined so as not to disrupt the visitor experience. Persons would be required from refraining from approaching park visitors and disturbing their right to peaceful enjoyment of the parks. And then also the food trucks and mobile vendors must operate in accordance with our city ordinance. So looking at setting up some parameters to allow folks who are partners with the city who make requests under certain circumstance to sell, promote their product and service, or in some areas, thoughts or ideas in the parks.
So with those requests, are they per event throughout the season, during their association to an event? I could see
One particular group they asked to set up whenever they want throughout the summertime, and so that's the one. It's a religious organization, and we allow them. We ask them or direct them on where they can stand in the park. It's next to the trail. It's pretty conspicuous, and so with them, it's that idea. With businesses, it's by event and special event only.
So I could think a whole bunch of people in the past that have wanted to, I'll just say solicit or present during the circulation of petitions. That was a year or two ago, and walking through the crowd, and I understand you're going to ask for, you're going to have permission and do that, but I'm thinking about how we start saying, you can, but it has to be within this location.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the ability, do we have other things that we as a park staff or others that are circulating through the crowd? I'm just trying to make sure we don't run into challenges. I can't think of one right now, but I just know the last couple of years we've had some items. I'm looking at the clerk because I think she may have been contacted by some of the requesters.
Right, and then there's also how this all fits in with the entirety of the mobile retail vending ordinance, including the hawker peddler, transient merchant subsections, and making sure, and charitable solicitation, which is separate, and making sure that those that are operating under those rules in these circumstances are being treated the same as those that wouldn't be operating in the park,
Correct.
for instance.
Yep.
So, but we can talk about all that in conjunction with the city attorney.
And that's a delicate balance. We're trying to set up rules and regulations for public property where folks are allowed to exercise certain rights that we don't want to prohibit, and we don't want to make it so restrictive. So this is certainly something we're not trying to do in a silo, but requesting information from all the various departments that interact and deal with this sort of situation.
So I think about and I know the director and others we've dealt with this in the past, the ability, there's different solicitation or messaging and communicating people wish to do when they have their, I'll say, bullhorn or standing on the corner.
Right.
And then at the same time, there's a concert venue going on and it's disruptive. If we have a designation for one location, can you have a separate designation for those that are, I'll say, producing noise?
I saw one sample policy in another community that in every park they have a designated area defined in every single park. So for instance, we would have one established in Soldiers and Sailors and Labor Park and St. Mary's Park, Munson Park, all of that, where you're allowed to exercise that option, the free speech option, regardless of what your message is. But we'd ask that you do it in this area.
Is it separate from one of the locations that we're allowing those with materials to be presented?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Certainly more to come. And welcome your feedback, just like every other policy and ordinance I brought you. If there's other things you think about, please let us know. Yeah.
This isn't current for, and I'm thinking of, it's election season, for instance, so I'm thinking about all of that and
Yep.
what rules we have to enforce or not enforce.
Yeah, currently it prohibits any program, profit, nonprofit business, anybody from setting up a table and offering anything in the park. Yeah. Doesn't necessarily address free speech and things of that
Right,
sort.
but they can't actually set up a table. and-
Correct.
Right, okay,
Yeah, that's prohibited.
okay. Just trying to make clear for the public.
Appreciate that.
Oh, Kelly?
Oh, sorry.
So when you say set up a table, can they stand in a place and distribute?
Right now, that's currently prohibited.
Okay. Can you go back one
Sure.
so I can look at that?
This one?
Number 3, I think it was. I guess I was just wondering how we were gonna be able to enforce those things in a public area, but
Yeah, this is where we get into, regardless of what your message is, you have the right to free speech, but we ask that you be in this area of the park, in this space, not going throughout the park, not next to the playground, things like that. And certainly refine this in consultation with Director Tolstead and Mr. Buds and Clerk Lavoy and, of course, Mr. Robinson.
and then with the food trucks, are we gonna expand that outside of the downtown, the one we did some years ago?
Yeah, that's actually a zoning regulation on where food trucks are allowed to operate, and that's one of the amendments we're looking at doing when we do the comprehensive update this fall to allow it.
So we allow it at all of the parks or just certain parks?
Right now, the food trucks are only allowed in certain designated zoning districts, and so if the park is in that district, they're allowed. But the language does say, unless otherwise approved by the mayor and city council. So the way that we've been working with that, you authorize the city manager to approve special event permits. And so if somebody has a food truck or a special event outside a zoning district where it's permitted, but they submit it and request with a special event application, we make sure first with the clerk that they have the necessary licenses and approvals, and then the city manager is allowed to approve those outside the zoning districts
Okay,
for special events.
thank you.
Yeah,
Michelle?
Can you go back to the next
Yeah.
slide of the photography?
yes.
So if I had a drone and I wanted to film something at an event, would I need a permit?
Yeah, so the next two deal with photography and videography. These are requests that we get, and oddly enough, my office got a request today from somebody who's wanting to do photography in the park. And so right now we don't have a policy related to photography, and it's managed much on a case-by-case basis, very subjective. This policy is crafted off one that I found in another community that I found was pretty good. Obviously, if I'm with my family and I'm taking pictures, that's fine. If, I'm doing senior photographs, that's fine. But if you want to do commercial photo shoots, you're bringing in equipment, you're bringing in props, things like that, you would need permission. But if you're taking nature photos, stuff like that, no permission. Don't, as long as you're not disrupting anybody in the parks, it's fine. So amateur photography, no problem. It's more the larger photography. Like we got a request today to do some photo shoots. They're hiring people. They're, bringing in props. They, things like that. So that we do ask, that you get permission first.
Thank you.
The next is videography. So we've also gotten several of these requests in the past year of folks who are wishing to shoot a movie in one of our parks. They're asking to close the park down, asking, they're having extras, their film equipment all over the park, things like that. And so we are going to develop a policy and a permitting process for those requests. Drone use is going to be covered in that. It's something more and more park systems are starting to develop, from outright banning them to you're allowed to do it as long as you're following the FAA guidelines. You're allowed to do it as long as you're not flying it low and disrupting people and, interrupting their enjoyment of the parks and things like that. So we haven't crafted that language yet, but it will be incorporated. Generally, again, personal passive videography is permitted. It's more the commercial where you're requesting, the park to be closed down and things of that sort. Metal detectors. So right now, we don't have a policy about this, though we do get requests again. Right now, you've probably seen the big signs at Munson Park. Metal detecting is strictly prohibited in Munson Park. But we're proposing a policy where you're allowed to do metal detecting in the park. That's no problem, as long as you're not in Munson or unless it's otherwise posted. Please don't damage anything in the course of trying to retrieve anything you may find. Please don't disturb wildlife, plants. When you're probing the ground, please don't dig giant holes without our permission, 4 inches or less. Putting the soil back where you found it. Must be for personal use, not for commercial use. And then we do have the right to restrict or limit metal detecting in any park like Munson.
So as I think about that, I would hope that the area around the national park and all those properties are not, because they're not all owned by the National Park Service. Some are by the city, some are by others. That whatever that designation of the national park and surrounding areas, I think should be prohibited for reasons of what it was before and what it still is. And I'm sure we've had those before in the past where people are going to drive down here and start digging up in the national park property.
Yeah.
Or in the area and it got lost and didn't get here somehow. They couldn't find it, but that was a good thing.
So that's why we have it in there unless it's otherwise posted, because we did think about areas like Rock Park, River Au Raisin Park, other parks that are within the heritage corridor where there may be significant cultural or archaeology items underneath there. We don't want folks metal detecting there. So we retain the right to not allow it in some city parks as well, like we do Munson.
So did I hear correctly that it's with permission?
You wouldn't need permission.
We're going to follow up if there's divots and holes that just appear and nobody knows how they got there, and it's obviously from detecting. Because you're going to keep digging until you get the item that keeps beeping. So
Yeah. So certainly, our park staff is very visible in the parks, making sure that people, if we see someone out there metal detecting, making sure that they're doing it appropriately, accordingly. If folks are complaining that somebody is, not following the policy. So it's more on the enforcement side. Certainly if council would like to change it, that you need permission to do metal detecting, we can certainly look at changing it to that as well. Given some of our extensive cultural sites, that may be a good thing to consider as well.
Michelle?
Along with the digging, we have a lot of fishermen that go in the river, and the other day I saw someone digging a hole at the side of the riverbank, probably burying their waste in there, because I think he caught a fish, but we probably need to put something in our park rules that they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be digging up holes and burying fish.
Yeah, and that gets into the general rules about not disturbing the natural habitat, the natural environment. Don't dig, don't displace, rocks, things like that. So we can look at beefing up that language about digging. Yeah. Okay, and generally prohibited and, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Andrew.
No problem.
Just taking the right note down.
Would it be necessary, I know that Munson Park is right next to an airport, would it be necessary to ban drone usage in Munson Park, or is that in accordance with FAA guidelines? It's sort of a no-fly zone anyway.
FAA already has a geofence around it, and so you wouldn't be able to get your drone in there. Generally, some people I know have found workarounds around that, but yeah.
So it would be sort of a redundant rule.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We can add it in there as well if, but by FAA.
Well, it assumes, if you're making rules for the future, assuming everything is where it is now.
Yeah.
So
I know my stepdad has tried to fly his drone and it stops. I don't know where that fence is, but he's not allowed to get any closer to Custer Airport. So most people at work, but I think for the smaller handheld ones that are not the professional drones, I've seen folks using those around Munson Park. They're not connected to Bluetooth or data or anything like that, but we would cover that in the policy, the personal drone more type.
I know at my house even is close enough to the airport where when I was getting the home inspection done, the guy was trying to check the flashing with a drone, and that was his standard. He's like, "How close are we to the airport right now?" Because he couldn't
Close
take
enough.
off, so
Yeah.
it just locked him down.
Yeah. Most of this is already prohibited in, so there's not much changes. No feeding of wildlife, no fireworks, no hunting, trapping. Camp tents, shade canopies, and portable shade structures. We do get this request a lot. Primarily, the reason we don't allow them is because A, we don't want them to blow away. We do allow them by special event, but the building inspector goes out and checks them to make sure that they're secure in the ground. But also in a lot of our parks, including St. Mary's, Labor Park, Carnes Park, and others, we have irrigation systems in the ground. And if people are staking through that, we have had instances where they're hitting the irrigation lines and damaging it. So that's the intent and the reason behind not allowing it, except for by special event permit. Generators and amplified sound is not allowed without written permission. That's a current rule. We do allow it, obviously, for certain special events, but smoking by city ordinance is prohibited. Mounting and placing of signs and banners without permission. This is a new one because we got several complaints this summer about folks who are using Nerf and other missile type toys in the playgrounds and the playscape. Hitting kids and things of that sort. So we are proposing adding some language that you're allowed to use Nerf and other toys like that, but please do it outside the playground area within a certain boundary. That's new. A new update as well, based on some feedback we've received, is the use of bounce houses in city parks. Right now, they're prohibited in all city park and on all city property. We had a discussion at our department head meeting last week. We are proposing to allow folks by special event permit only to have bounce houses in the park. Again, you have to have liability insurance and name the city as additionally insured. The building department would go out just as they do tents to tenant or make sure the stakes are appropriate and secure into the ground. Also, the city would reserve the right, and on days where weather is forecast to be bad or if bad conditions blow in, you would be required to take it down. Also, supervisory or supervision requirements for the bounce houses as well. But we're proposing to change that language and consider allowing them on a case-by-case basis.
Andrew?
Yeah, I just want to touch on an item on this slide, the mounting and placing of signs and banners. My understanding is that I could go down on the corner of Elm and Monroe Street and hold a sign that says dash hounds are the best dogs. But if I take a sign wire and put that in the ground, that's a violation. You can't place it or stake it in the ground. But if I'm
Correct.
standing there holding it, that's totally fine.
Yeah, because again, that's exercise of your First Amendment right if you're there. But our sign ordinance prohibits the placement of any signs in the public right of way. And so this is more like we don't allow them right now. Last year, I think we had Sodexo was offering free meals all summer long, and they wanted to put yard signs in the city park. That very next week, I got a request from somebody else wanting to put signs in every park. And then the next week, the same thing. And we've just said, no, that's not allowed. The only exception that we made and we provided written permission for was banners promoting the tot lots in certain parks this year. And we directed them on where they could put them and things like that. But the other exception is we put signs at St. Mary's Park the night of concerts, but we put them out in the morning of that says live concert or live music tonight, and then they're out by the next day or that evening.
Kelly?
Like, I think, okay, you said without written
Correct.
permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, I mean, Sodexo, I don't know the other people who were asking you, but they giving away free food.
Right.
And they're right there the entire time that they're giving the food away.
Yep.
So I think they should, but I didn't read the without written permission.
We did give them permission, but only on the days they were giving it out. So they couldn't leave it out there all the time, but they were allowed to have it out when they were the day of. And same with like graduation parties and things like that, right? People put signs in about parties. If you're doing a shelter reservation, you're allowed to have it out as long as you're not taping, damaging the building, things like that. But put it in during the event, and then take it with you.
I like the idea of allowing the bounce houses.
Yeah.
That was a bummer we couldn't have bounce houses at the center had an event. We
Yeah.
couldn't have bounce houses.
Yep, that's what prompted us to do a review of it and consider it. Okay, and wrapping up, orienteering and geocaching. We do get folks, if you're unfamiliar, orienteering is Pokemon Go and other activities where you're using GPS as like scavenger hunts and things like that. So geocaching, where you leave a small token and people use the geocache app, go find it, put their initials and their date, and kind of social interaction and using maps and GPS. So again, we're allowing that, permitting it, is so long as you're not in conflict with other park uses or disruptive to the use or enjoyment. For geocaching, if they're leaving a small item, we put some language in there about where it can be and, non-descriptive and size limitations and things like that. Most of the time, they're about that big. Closure of park facilities, city retains the right to close a park or any space at any time for any length of time. Assembly, this is a rule right now. If you have a group of 30 or less people, you're allowed to have the gathering. Again, facilities are a first come, first served basis. However, if you're having a gathering of more than 30 people or around any common concerted purpose, we ask that you get a permit for assembly or a special event permit. And generally, people abide by that. Behavior, again, code of conduct, it's unchanged. No abusive, threatening, insulting, indecent, profane, or other language. And then damage of property, no person shall injure or damage park facility or property. I can send this draft out as well if you'd like to review it and offer comment back again. Certainly it's a discussion that's more and ongoing before we bring a final version back for approval.
Sure, that'd be great. Kelly?
So what are you gonna do if there's bad behavior in the park, bad language and all of that?
So generally, our seasonal park staff, I ask them not to engage in it, but they call the non-emergency number and have police respond. The older park staff, the ones that are there year round, they may go up to somebody but their next step would always be to contact public safety.
See any other questions? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
One more item yet?
One more item. Sorry, there's one more item. And we have had some public inquiries, et cetera, about what's going on at the former Lazy Boy headquarters site. And in a couple of meetings, I've learned some things that we're planning and why certain things are waiting. There's timeliness that's involved in all this. And I thought this was a good opportunity for Mr. Cochran to kind of explain those items to you so you're all aware of why and the importance of the timing of some issues.
All right, good evening again. So we've had a lot of stops and starts on the Lazy Boy project, as you're aware. And to Mr. Robinson's point, we are at a point where we do have a lot to talk about. There is a lot going on. There's a lot that happened, a lot that's on the horizon, and give you a timeline on what's to come. And so first I wanted to start with all that we have done. When you think about this project and the 3 years that we've had to do it, we've really done a lot of work. And certainly I have a star there. This was not a development ready site. This was not a greenfield site that all it needed was water sewer ran to it. There were a lot of challenges that I won't get into. If you'd like a reminder, certainly give me a call. But starting with acquiring this 26-acre property, working with city council and other stakeholders, we developed the site master plan and the concept of what we thought it could be for the highest and best use for benefit of the city. Following developing that sub-area plan, we got a developer and we negotiated a development agreement and we had that executed. Obviously, those discussions took a lot of time as well. Following that, because there was a 250,000 square foot building on the site that was over 90 years old, as well as it being a brownfield, and certainly a lot of eligible activities to help us pay for all the activity. We developed a brownfield plan that was approved by the Brownfield Authority and City Council, plus 2 amendments since then due to certain conditions and changes. In the middle of a pandemic, we tore down a 250,000 square foot building, as well as all the outbuildings. We negotiated with Frenchtown Township a jurisdictional land transfer and did the infamous land swap to bring all the property underneath the city's jurisdiction and control. We initiated the rezoning, we developed the plan, we developed the design standards. All of that was initiated, developed, and approved by the Planning Commission following multiple public hearings as well as City Council. We divided the site and had to develop legal descriptions and do surveys from 4 parcels, making it 8 new parcels. A long fight with the state of Michigan to get them to support our Act 381 work plan and to support the brownfield plan for state tax capture to get that paid off earlier. The building was built over Mason Run Drain. We had to work with the Drain Commissioner's Office and Eagle, as well as other partners, to daylight that, and I'll get more into that as we talk about the progress. We had about an acre of wetlands we had to mitigate and work with a partner to buy into the wetland bank. All of the infrastructure for all 26 acres was designed and approved. Certainly no small feat, given we had to get that through MDOT, the Drain Commission, and Eagle, as well as our own agencies. We installed in the northbound Telegraph Road right turn lane into the site. We installed the new traffic signal, except for the dedicated left turn signal, which I'll talk about in a moment. We extended Holiday Boulevard partially to the Chipotle, and it's called the Allrig site. We completed the underground installation of all the public utilities for water and sewer. That included a very large retention pond that was dug. You probably see the spoils and the big mound of dirt out there right now ready to be removed. And then also we granted a review and approved the site plan and building plans and the development for parcel G, which was Dairy Queen. We went through the same process and conveyed and approved the site plan and the development of parcel F, which is where Chipotle, SVS Vision, and last week Five Guys submitted a building permit application to fill that last unit in that development. And so the map that you see here is the new site, the Lazy Boy site, and all of the parcels in which it was divided. So parcel G, which you see north of Mason Run Drain, is the Dairy Queen. Parcel F is the one where Chipotle, SVS Vision, and Five Guys are going. And then I'll talk more about A, B1, B2, and C in a second. Parcel J is all of the infrastructure, including the retention pond. So challenges that we have encountered probably over the past year and a half, which has made progress somewhat a little bit slower than I think we all anticipated. Doing the water and sewer underground installation was relatively easy because that was our own work. However, we did have to work with Eagle and the Drain Commission's office. But we had to coordinate utility relocation, which is still not completed, with DTE, Comcast, Michigan Gas, and most importantly, Buckeye Telesystems. They have fiber running through the site. And if we were to cut that fiber or relocate it or disturb it in any way, we're talking millions more in costs. And so trying to coordinate all of those utilities to do what we want them to do in our time is obviously rather difficult. We're still waiting on Buckeye and Comcast to relocate some of their lines to complete the relocation of Holiday, or the extension of Holiday and Huber. I understand that's to be done relatively soon, though. The dedicated left turn signal, there's a business that wants to go in at parcel A, which you see on the south side of Holiday along Telegraph Road, but they were demanding that we install a left turn signal for southbound Telegraph Road traffic. That is under MDOT's jurisdiction. This business would not sign until MDOT allowed us to put the left turn signal in. We used our lobbyists, we used Manick & Smith, we used everybody to get MDOT to allow us to put this turn signal in based on projected traffic. This took many meetings with MDOT, many meetings with the developer, and we still are not successful. They will not let us put the left turn signal in until after the development is in that shows the counts justify it. They allowed us to build the mast arm. They allowed us to wire for it. They just won't allow us to install it. However, after much going back and forth with the tenant and parcel A, we gave a letter to them signed by the city manager and myself, letting them know after they move in, if they move forward with construction, we're not going to let up the gas. We're still going to diligently try and move forward with getting the left turn signal installed. And they signed. They finally saw that the city was doing all that we possibly could. And I'll talk about that in a second. State of Michigan support for the brownfield plan. I mentioned that. We have a brownfield plan that we were trying to get the state to contribute to. Many meetings for over 3 years, meeting with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, our state legislators, others, trying to get them to see the benefit of our project. The benefit of having their support is we can pay off our brownfield plan sooner and get reimbursed sooner if we're able to capture those mills as well. After much fight, we got that approved by the Michigan Strategic Fund, I believe, at their April board meeting. And so that was something that was holding us up as well. And then some news for you to be aware of what's going to happen next year. Mason Run, because we daylighted Mason Run and removed the foundation of Lazy Boy, the end of the culvert outside Telegraph Road was crumbling and it needed to be replaced. The Drain Commissioner's Office, Eagle, and MDOT said the city is going to have to pay for that upwards to the tune of $300,000. We went back, we heard MDOT and the Drain Commission were going to redo the culvert underneath Telegraph Road, but we didn't know when. Could be this year, could be 3 years. And we said, well, we don't want to do that if you're going to come in behind us and do it anyway. And so after a lot of discussion, this past Friday, we met with the Drain Commissioner's Office and Manick and Smith. MDOT is going to work with the Drain Commission to replace that whole culvert, saving the city upwards of $300,000. The bad news is that's going to be done next summer. The bad news of that is Telegraph Road will be down to 2 lanes all next summer while they're doing this because they have to rip up the road, replace the culvert, and then repair the road over that. And they want to maintain traffic. So that's been part of the holdup too. We didn't want to install all the sidewalks if they were going to come in and rip them up when they did this project. So we waited to install the sidewalks and now it's going to get done next year. Thanks to the partnership, I have to give credit to the Drain Commissioner, David Thompson, and his staff for getting this project moved up. So what's to come? This summer and fall yet, you're going to see Holiday extended to Huber Drive, and Huber Drive is going to be extended north to Greenfield and out to Stewart Road. We were finalizing the design of the intersection. For those who were on the committee where we worked on the plan for the site, we did not just want a standard blacktop T intersection. We wanted it landscaped, we wanted it raised, we wanted it to look very attractive and raise expectations for the site. We went back and forth with the designer, the contractor a lot. Working with MKSK, we got that approved a couple weeks ago. Zeiler Construction, City Council approved their construction project or contract a while ago. And so, again, we're waiting for the utility relocation and the design of the intersection. That's going to be completed yet this summer. We did extend their deadline to September 30th. It was previously August 31st. And so once that also includes a culvert over Mason Run Drain, which required the Drain Commissioner and Eagle to approve that design as well that we waited for. I can say we have now conveyed the following parcels to the developer and are out of city ownership or are shortly going to do so. Parcel A, we have site plans for a new Aldi grocery store on that site. They want to begin construction sometime mid-August. That's under site plan review right now. Administratively, does not need to go to the Planning Commission. Once we approve it, then they're allowed to apply for building permits and they'll be off to the races this fall. There's been some discussion about why the sidewalks and landscaping aren't installed along North Telegraph Road. Aldi is responsible for that. Previously, the city was going to do it and bear the cost, and working with the developer, they are now making Aldi do it. So And along with their construction, they're going to be installing the trees, all the landscaping, the 8-foot path along Telegraph Road, and the sidewalks along Holiday, all as part of their project. So that will be going in. To the east, parcel B2, we've received site plans for a 5-unit commercial development that includes a drive-through. So we're reviewing that as well right now. Parcel C, which is along Huber Drive at the south end, is 2 6-unit residential apartment buildings that we've received the plans for those last week. All of these hope to construct beginning in August and take advantage of what's left of the summer and fall, finish the interior over the winter time, and have them completed early next year. So you're going to be seeing a whole lot of activity yet this year. Some of it we've held off on, obviously, because we didn't want to bear the cost when we've gotten the developers to bear the cost of that. And then parcel J was also conveyed to the developer. That's all the public infrastructure, including the roads and the retention pond. So that's happening late this summer and fall. Any questions on that component?
Any questions? Brian?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just the general development of the trees, shrubs, et cetera, in front of the current strip mall, that we're waiting on until the all of the drain gets completed?
Yep, so we're waiting for that culvert because they're going to be traversing that property during the meantime, so.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, what entity has final site plan approval over these plots?
So we have it in the development agreement and the PUD agreement that as long as everything is done in accordance with the PUD design standards as well as the sub-area plan, we will do an administrative review internally with all the departments, and we also have a representative from the Planning Commission on that committee. If they vary from that, if they're seeking variances in any way from the design standards of their sub-area plan, it goes to the Planning Commission for approval.
Michelle?
So currently, who is in charge of maintaining the landscaping around there? Is it us?
Yeah, it was. And so I know we went out there and mowed it last week. We were in the process of conveying it from the city to the developer. It will now be the developer's responsibility to mow and
By
maintain.
Chipotle as well, that area?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Chipotle is responsible for their own parcel. The land that's in front of it, the 25-foot right-of-way between the private property line and Telegraph Road is our responsibility.
And when did you say Aldi's was going to be doing their,
As soon as they get site plan approval, so looking at mid-August, giving them that approval, then they have to apply for their building permits.
Okay.
And we've got that full set right now, so we're reviewing that right now in conjunction with the site plan, so we'll be ready to issue permits
and
right
then
away.
as far as the road construction and the sidewalk, that's Aldi's going to be doing that?
Aldi is doing the sidewalk and the landscaping around their property. The Holiday and Huber infrastructure and the road installation is the city doing that, and that's going to be once all the utilities get relocated. And then the culvert replacement is going to be an MDOT project early next year.
Is any of the landscaping change that we talked about as a committee, or is it?
No. And all of that is in the design standards. And so when somebody submits a site plan, they have to show all the landscaping that they want to do, the species they're using, the spacing, and all of that is in the design standards. We review that with MKSK to make sure it's in accordance with what the committee and city council and planning commission approved. As long as it is, we can grant the approval. If it's not, and they're requesting a change to that, it has to go before the planning commission.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Is this the entire site?
No, this is the entire site. So parcel F is where Chipotle and Five Guys and SVS Vision is. Parcels H and D, we don't have anybody there yet. They're continuing to market that. And then parcel I, we're continuing to market that as well with the developer. Across the street, you may remember this was not part of the jurisdictional transfer. So the city owns that parking lot on the north side of Greenfield. The developer does not. And we've had a lot of interest in that site, the multiple national franchises who have approached us about that. that we've offered it to and are working with them. One stipulation we are putting on them, even though it's not in the city and not necessarily under our zoning regulations, we are saying as a condition of the city conveying that to anybody, we want them to follow the same standards as the rest of the Lazy Boy site and commit to doing that.
So are any of these additional zones being marketed specifically for housing?
Yes, and I can zoom in really close, but in red, part of the PUD plan that the Planning Commission and City Council approved, each of those parcels has an identified permitted use. And so parcel B1, parcel C, D, and E are all identified for residential only. Parcel I, which is behind Dairy Queen, can be residential or commercial, depending on the use. And that's according to the sub-area plan and the PUD that Planning Commission and Council approved.
Yeah.
Other questions? Anything further, Mark?
Yep. So over the fall and winter, we are going to be doing the final design for the sidewalk and the pathway for the remainder of Telegraph Road, so that section in front of Chipotle. The remainder of Holiday Drive that is not the developer's responsibility. So going east to Huber and then all of Huber Drive, the sidewalks and the landscaping will be designed over the winter time for an installation first thing in the spring. And then we're also doing the same thing for the open green space around the Mason Run drain and the site entry at the two corners. And then street lighting is also under design as well. That has not been installed yet because we've been waiting to find out where all the driveways for these parcels and entries to the development are going to be before we can identify the exact placement of the street lights, as well as where all the private utility leads, so where everybody is pulling their electrical from, so that we can tap into that. So now that we've got the site plans, we can make that determination, do the final layout, and have the sidewalks, all the pathways, the street lights, pedestrian lighting, tree planting, and landscaping in the spring. Next summer, again, drivers beware, Telegraph Road, the culvert installation, and then by the end of next summer, the sidewalk, pathways, and landscaping should all be complete and done.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions for Mark? Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson, anything further?
No, that concludes the topics we want to talk about, unless any of the council members would like to talk about the items on the regular agenda.
So we'll take that. I know we have about 4 minutes because we want to make sure we have time as we are managing our work sessions before the next meeting. Any items on the regular agenda that you wish to bring up for a question or thoughts before the meeting for Mr. Robinson? Brian?
Yeah, just the public hearing for the Brownfield Plan, Amendment Number 2. If you just want to kind of briefly touch it, just kind of get us prepared.
Yep. So for this one, we are doing a second amendment to the original Brownfield plan. While we're made some minor modifications, but the most significant one is we're deferring the capture of any administrative or local Brownfield revolving fund until the end, which is after the city has repaid, or the Brownfield Authority has repaid its Brownfield bond that is covering a lot of the costs associated with the development. And then also the developer has been repaid for their eligible expenses as well. So we're not going to capture that until the end and everybody's been repaid. Prior to that, also the Brownfield plan was for, I think, 26 years. By state law, you're allowed to have 30 years. So we've extended that capture out the full 30 years to make sure that all the collection is done and captured. The other was we reduced in the original Brownfield plan. We had estimated a total investment in the site at $60 million. That was totally based on guesses of what we thought was going to go in there, how much commercial, how much residential. By the time we actually got all the plans and the sites and everything else, that number is more like 25 million. And so we've updated that figure as well to be more reflective of the actual situation. So making those 3 major modifications for consideration.
Other comments about the agenda? Quick comment. So I know that information presented, thanks if you send it along, Mark. I know that last work session, we had some discussion on a couple items, one being the public art, and then the other, of course, with recreational vehicles. And I know that's going to come back around. I know that the manager's been contacted by at least a couple members of the council for some input or opportunities to discuss. So I would just say for council, if there's items that you want to have conversation with up front, whether it be with the manager, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Vanasacker, we can schedule those. If not, send your comments in so we have those. So when we come back around at our next work session or after that, we have the opportunity to kind of work through those and come to some, I'll say, I don't want to say agreements, but understanding and what an ordinance and policies may look like. So just kind of a heads up. Any further, Mr. Robinson?
No, sir, that's it.
Very good. So if there's nothing further, we have about 10 minutes. So at this time, I'll close the work session and we'll have the city council start. Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman. Stillgrave. Vining. Jermaine. Lamore.
Present.
Felder.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. Ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have faith and hope in each other and our city. We ask for your guidance in the decisions that are made here this evening. We ask you to help us work for the welfare of this community and all its residents.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you. I'll look to Mr. Robinson. Any items on the agenda or anything, adjustments from the administration?
None at this time.
Any comments from the council regarding the agenda? If not, a motion. Councilman Lamore?
Yes, Your Honor, make a motion that we approve the agenda as written.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine? Lamore? Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $2,080,767.46, 2080767.46.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items to be pulled from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, should be in order. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Stillgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine? Lamore? Felder? Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 4151, the Opportunity Center at ALCC 2023 third quarterly report.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, I think we received a third quarter report. Comments, please?
Yes, sir. I think that, that with this third quarterly report that they want to present, they're not here to present it? It's just a communication, apparently. I thought someone would actually come in and walk through it, but okay. No, I have no adjustments with that, and it seemed in order with what we were expecting.
Presentations on the quarterly reports. We've had correspondence as well, or communication. It is a presentation with the facts and information of the third quarter. It also shows the percentage of the planned budget and where that's going through. And then also, there's always, which is nice, is on the right column is the explanation of any variances of timing of the year, the different items and how they're doing and how they're managing through the budget. So I just appreciate this report and the work from MCOP and Stephanie Kasperzak to get this to us for our review. Any questions or comments from council? And I understand, looking at this, it's a presentation communication, doesn't require action by the council, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Very good. Comments? Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4157, public hearing for Brownfield Plan Amendment Number 2 for the former Lazy Boy headquarters, and there are no comments on file in the clerk's office.
Thank you. I know that at the work session, we had a kind of a review with this, but also I'll just, before we open the public hearing, I want to make sure there's not any other opening or comments from the administration or council.
There's not from administration.
Okay. I know this later on our agenda as well under council action, but this time I'll open the public hearing on item 4157, public hearing for the Brownfield Plan Amendment Number 2 for the former Lazy Boy headquarters site. Any comments from those present here this evening for this public hearing? Any comments on item 4157? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action. Item 4156, consideration of former Lazy Boy headquarters site, Brownfield Plan, Amendment Number 2.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, comments?
Yes, sir, we are looking for the consideration of the amendment number 2 for the Lazy Boy headquarters site brownfield plan. And we're hoping to move to approve the former Lazy Boy headquarters site for that. And should we have any questions, Mr. Cochran he can expand on what he explained to you during the work session.
Thank you. I would, if it could be, have Mr. Cochran did present at the work session, and sometimes people watch the work sessions that may not be here. And having that review, I think it was a very good and quick review about why there's a consideration on the amendment to the plan and the main reasons why. But I think having it here at those that are here and that are watching would find of interest as well. Mr. Cochran.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Mark Cochran, Director of Economic and Community Development. So the original brownfield plan has had one prior amendment, and this evening we're bringing forward for final approval the amendment for amendment number 2. There's 5 things that are included in this amendment. First is, as I indicated during the work session, the original brownfield amendment was based on projections of capital investment into the site at a level of $60 million. That was purely conceptual based on what we thought was going to develop at the site. Based on realistic conditions, the number of houses that have been proposed or residential units, the amount of commercial space and square footage, that's been reduced down to $25 million to reflect, again, a more realistic current estimated investment projections provided by the developer. Hopefully it's going to be more than that. If it is, it'll get paid off sooner. We also, the original plan, I believe, went out 23 or 26 years by law. By state law, we're allowed to extend the capture period out to the full 30 years. So that's what we revised the plan to reflect that as well. The city had also approved prior the deferment of capture of administrative, and it's called LBRF, Local Brownfield Revolving Funds, until after the city's debt has been repaid, as well as the developer's debt. On every brownfield plan, typically we capture some portion for administrative costs as well as to go into the local revolving fund, and we're going to defer that. Also, there was, council may remember, maybe not, we had established a commercial rehab district on this site, which would allow us to offer commercial rehab tax abatement. We've removed that estimate from the tables in the brownfield plan. We don't expect we're going to be using that. We don't want to offer any abatements in the future, except for in extenuating circumstances, I think, because we need everybody to get paid. And then, again, the district remains. It's just pulled from the table. And then finally, the city has a development agreement with the developer, and then we also have the brownfield plan. In our development agreement, we propose paying back the developer for their costs at an interest rate of 4%, but the brownfield plan showed an interest rate of 3%. So those items did not match, and so we added one line in the brownfield plan to show an additional 1% in the interest that will be captured on local-only taxes or millages, to match what's in the development agreement. So it's really just revising to be consistent across all the documents.
Thank you, Mark. Any comments or questions from council? I know we've heard it twice now, but that's any thoughts that may have come forward? Seeing none. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
So this is item 4156 and is up for council's consideration and action. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll make a motion to move to approve the former Lazy Boy headquarters site brownfield plan, amendment number 2.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Germaini, supported by Councilman Lamore. Item 4156, consideration of the former Lazy Boy headquarters site brownfield plan, amendment number 2. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Yes. Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
I have no further items this evening.
So we're at council comments. It is July, so we start with precinct 1. Councilwoman Whitman, comments this evening?
I'm kind of like in a shock. It went so fast tonight. But The only thing that I had that I wanted to bring up was to ask people to please remember Juneteenth. You know, that it's on the 19th. And I know that there are people that have celebrations and, you know, events planned, and we should you know, even on TV, they have so many shows that are, you know, addressing this, and that we should stay mindful and celebrate. So, or at least remember. So that's basically all I have tonight.
Councilwoman, I know we have dates throughout the year, and there's always the day, but then there's also be mindful that throughout the year, that we keep that same energy and thought process on many items. So thank you. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Thank you, Your Honor. Couple things. I want to thank Mark and Director Tolstead for wonderful presentations. Very informative. Thank you. Also, there's a lot going on in our city in this next week here. Tomorrow night, there's line dancing at St. Mary's Park. On Thursday night, there is the Bob Seger Tribute Band. There's also movie night on Friday at Labor Park. And, well, and it is the third Fridays also, so there's a lot of things going on downtown. Just let you know what's happening around here.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
Yes, Your Honor. On Saturday, July 15th, we held the library held the Memories of Orchard East Community Digital Archive Project, and it was in partnership with the Opportunity Center in the city of Monroe, and we had a beautiful turnout. We did lose two matriarchs in our community who had their services this weekend, Miss Ernestine Johnson and Miss Maddie Hoy. So attendance was down. So we've decided we're going to make this an ongoing project. But the purpose of the project is to bring in items to represent your memories of the Orchard East. And we can scan them, photograph them, preserve them to be preserved in a digital archive. We also did audio and I believe some video recordings of people from the old neighborhood telling their stories. So the collection seeks to preserve the cultural and economic significance of the Orchard East community. And some of the items that are of interest include community or group memorabilia, any items that are personally significant and relate to the Orchard East, photographs, recipe books, Bibles, event flyers, letters. We can even preserve 3D items. So if you have grandma's old cast iron skillet or anything you think is significant to the history of the neighborhood, we'd like to preserve it in the Monroe County Library System digital archive. We were able to identify so many businesses thanks to the maps that the city provided. And we had people, oh my goodness, as old as 85 years old who lived there many, many years ago, even immigrants who came directly to Monroe from different places in the world. It was just a wonderful experience. And we are going to carry it on. It's an ongoing project. So if anyone is interested, they can contact Regina Manning at Ellis Library. That phone number is 734-241-5277. And if need be, we'll come to you to gather the information. So if you can't get out, we will definitely come to you or meet you at any one of our 16 branches. So it was just a wonderful experience, and I look forward to having more pop-ups that we call the History Harvest, where we're able to harvest significant items or stories relating to the Orchard East community. So it's coming along. And I also wanted to thank the Selma Rakens Community Garden had a yard hydrant that our firefighters donated years ago, and it broke on a Saturday, and the water was just leaking out. So I emailed Mr. Leroy. he got on it right away, had somebody come out and turn the water off by the meter so we weren't wasting the city's water. I think that Monday, Parks and Recs was out in the park doing their thing, and I called the whole crew over, and we attempted to make some repairs, and the water department pulled up, and eventually Omar Furden, who's an engineer by trade, he was able to look right at it and repair it right away. But I just wanted to thank Parks and Rec and the water department for their quick response. And I see Patrick is not here this evening, but I did have some residents call in about certain sidewalks that are restricting their wheelchair access. And I know they're on top of that, but I wanted to mention the northwest corner of at Perry Street and Winchester going into the credit union. It looks like, I don't know what you call those things at the end of the sidewalk, and you put the orange little, what are those called, Mark?
The ED ramps?
Yes. So it looked like they intended to build that, but it just never got built. So people in wheelchairs have to go out into the drive, which is probably about 25, 30 feet back, and go into the street. So I just wanted to make DPS aware of that, and the rest I'll send to
Yeah.
DPS.
Yes, engineering
Patrick.
and DPS, I'll take care of it.
Engineering. I'll email him the rest of those. And that is all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I'm thrilled that the Lazy Boy site is not dusty anymore, and there's actually some action going on, so I'm happy about that. They've also started to fix the railroad cement on Kentucky, which is a wonderful thing, and I noticed they still have the roadblocks, so I think it's more than they thought it was, so very happy about that. And also the Health Department on August 12th, and the reason I mention it now, it's a free event. They're having a clinic for kids. You have to make an appointment from 9 to 1. It's a Saturday at the Health Department. And it's from preschool to 12th grade, immunizations, all kinds of health that you can get free at the Health Department. Call and make your reservation because it's going to fill up fast. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one brief little thing. As they always say, if you, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. In this case, I have to thank State Representative Will Brook for his help in getting a hold of the right person at Norfolk Southern. Because of that, we were able to find the person to actually get some action done down there, which Councilman Germaini was talking about. So I'm very happy to see that, and hope that they will continue to either beef up or see the right way, and hopefully consider doing a little rail consolidation down there. But one way or another, at least get that fixed and get moving in the right direction. So very thankful for that, and that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Wine crawl this Friday, as long as we're listing out events. Looking forward to that. That's all I have for this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have just a reminder that I brought at the work session, as we've had a couple work sessions now, presentations on a variety of topics. I know a couple of council members have had contact with the administration regarding some of their thoughts, and opportunity to sit and chat about those. So just remind the rest of the council whether the items in the past were the recreational vehicles, the art discussions, as well as the item that we had this evening. So please, if you have anything, forward those to Mr. Robinson, administration, so we can have a dialogue in the future here and here with council action. And my last comment is appreciate the updates and information on the Lazy Boy development site. It's moving forward. It always has moved forward, just a little faster. I think we're at a point now that I see where we're going to be going not only this year, next year, and hopefully those that may not have caught the slides, the information, it was presented during the work session. You can go back and see that as well. That's my comments for this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I just have one comment this evening. We still have the questionnaire, the 6-question questionnaire that should only take 2 minutes of your time. We've had a surge in responses lately, and just a reminder, this is about upcoming elections and the new 9 days of early voting, et cetera. So if you want to get your comments in, we'll be definitely running it through the end of the month. And I appreciate everyone who's already participated. It's great to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the city manager this evening.
Well, sir, I think we've covered a lot, and I think that we're moving forward very smoothly, especially with the little bumps I have, thinking that somebody's going to present when it's on the presentations. But as we move forward, I think that I think the council, as I had to reach out to them to update them on some things prior to the weekend, and I appreciate you taking the calls, and I anticipate I will be reaching out to each of you a little more often, and I think I'd like, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to work to try to get scheduled some actual just one-on-one time with each one of you, because there are some topics that, now that I'm starting to get the understanding of how the administration and how the actual city workers goes, I now want to have your opinion so that I understand, as you represent the public, where the direction, where I can mesh the two a little bit better. And so I'm hoping you guys will be open to meeting with me. It doesn't have to be long, but something where I can actually have one-on-one time with you. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Next is citizens' comments. So if there's any comments from those present, just as we always do, just mindful kind of the rules of the chamber. If you have items to say, please come forward to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction, or residence, and also mindful that 3 minutes. So any comments from those present here this evening? Any comments from those present? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes. Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Mayor Clark?
Yes. And thank you for being here.